Hey bike farmers, thanks for clicking in. So I've had 3 customer service interactions with experts that I've had to go to for help, and all 3 of them left me wondering, why are we always being asked to just trust the expert's opinion when none of the options they give us are any good at all? All 3 of these experiences left me thinking there's gotta be a better way. This is what I deal with every single day at the bike shop from my side of the counter. So I sat down and I drafted up a bit of an outline on how I can talk about this subject while I'm fixing this vintage Trek road bike that I think is gonna be a pretty straightforward, a little bit more than a pump and polish type service, just to get it ready for the bike swap in a couple of weeks. So if you're interested in finding out why I think you should trust your mechanic, kick back and relax and let's get started. So about a month ago, we got an email from the vet saying that our 11-year-old Boston Terrier was ready for a checkup appointment. And just when that email came through, we started noticing that his farts were so smelly that the entire house would reek. Not only that, but he had just ran out of his $80 a month allergy medicine to help his skin condition because he gets really pink. So I scheduled a vet appointment and we took him in. And as the assistant held him down, the vet took a good look at his eye, and I could just see it in her face. It was getting worse and worse and worse, and she let me know that something had poked him in the eye far enough that it had given him an ulcer in his eye, which is somewhat common, especially for the breeds with the buggy eyes. And they kind of heal themselves, but it can be tricky, especially on the breeds with the buggy eyes. I said, okay, well, what if it doesn't heal? And she's like, well, then we have to remove the eye. And I was like, oh boy. And you know, he's already blind. He's got like, they're not cataracts, but fatty lipids. And she's like, yeah, I'm guessing that just with everything I'm seeing here, that's probably what it'll end up in, but we got to try it out. I said, okay. Well, long story short is we tried a bunch of stuff out and gave it some time and it wasn't getting better. So now he has surgery scheduled for next week. Now the problem I have is I was like, okay, you know, that's fine. As long as it's somewhat reasonable, you know, we'll go ahead and do it. And the vet kind of, you know, was really pushing us there. She never mentioned, you know, like, oh man, we have a tough decision to make, you know, like they kind of do when you get towards the end of your pet's life. It just never even really came up. I kind of hinted at it, but it was batted away. But then I mentioned it to a few people and like so many people out of the blue were just like, just put him down. It's time, you know? And I'm like, really? You know, he seems to be in good shape otherwise and blah, blah, blah. And that just got me second guessing, you know, like, you know, is the vet selling me something that I don't need here? You know, what is the right decision? What do people usually do? What do they recommend, you know? And, you know, is it in the best interest of the animal? What do you consider? And I got to think about these really big things all of a sudden. And I mean, I think we're going to go ahead with the surgery unless like something else comes up. But, you know, it just got me thinking where I can't, you know, it was hard to just trust what they were telling me, trust the professional opinion as much as I wanted to. The feedback I was getting from a lot of people was just like the opposite, kind of old school, you know? And I was like, oh, have things changed in the veterinary world and all that? So that was what got me thinking. A couple weeks later, my son's Volvo needed tires. So we scheduled our appointment with the local auto shop here. And these are people that I've known my whole life. I've grown up with them, you know, in these small towns, we all know each other. And it's at least 2nd generation, maybe 3rd generation owned. They're one of the major shops, totally trustworthy. I have all my stuff done with them. It's great, but they just built this new big facility and they've adopted the new school of, you know, they're really staying ahead of the game with auto repair. But anyway, get the tires put on and then son gets his car back and then he's like, hey, it's pulling to the left. It's like, okay, well, you know, they'll make it right. We'll take it back and see what they say. And they're like, yeah, you know, we can give the car an alignment, but, you know, we'd highly recommend replacing the lower control arms. And they quoted $1,300 to replace the lower control arms before the alignment. And they just recommended that service. They were like, we suggest or we recommend that you do this to be sure, but we could do the alignment without doing that. It'd be $180, but we can't really guarantee success, you know? And that got me thinking, I'm like, okay, well, I've done this before at the bike shop. You know, there's rideable and there's right. And so give them 2 options. It's like, yeah, we can adjust your brakes for 20 or 30 bucks, but really the whole bike needs a tune-up and you should get the, you know, $120 tune-up and get some pads and whatever, right? So you kind of recommend both. And so looking into it a little bit more, I'm like, oh, well, lower control arms are pretty easy if you have a lift, and stepdad has a lift. and he knows how to do some stuff. I'm like, let's just buy the control arms and do it ourselves. And that's probably the decision that we're gonna end up making there, and it's fine, but I suspect that a lot of people presented with that, they would just go forward with it, or if they have a lift and everything, they'd be like, oh, it's highway robbery, I can do it at home for $200, right? Okay, and then the next one, the third thing that I've had happen is I found a bike that I want to buy from a private seller, and there'll be a video about this, and it's too far to go get, so I wanted to have it shipped, and so I called a local bike shop and asked them if I buy this bike from this guy and have him drop it off, would they be able to box it up and ship it to me for a couple $100? I'm like, I know what this stuff costs, you can send it right to my bike shop. And, the first person I was talking to was trying to answer the questions, but didn't know what they were talking about. I could tell, and I was just like, hey, is, the owner or the manager, service manager? And they got me in touch with the owner, and he was great. Totally normal guy, which was super weird because he's a bike shop owner, and I figured he'd be a weirdo, but he seemed like a totally normal guy. And he's like, yep, just have him drop it off, and we'll take care of it. So the guy dropped it off, and it was like right before Christmas, and they warned him. They said, like, hey, it's Christmas time, and we're busy, and it's going to be a few days, so let Andy know. And so he did, and so I waited until yesterday. So we're in between Christmas and New Year's right now, but I figured it was after Christmas, and the whole weekend had gone by and whatever, and I just called for an update to see if they were thinking about it or whatever, and somebody answered the phone, and I could tell that they weren't a service person, they were a retail employee, and she's like, oh yeah, we have it right here, it looks like they haven't gotten to it yet. And I'm like, okay, well, can you tell me when they're thinking about getting to it? And she's like, no, but I'll tell you what, I'll put a note on it letting them know you're antsy. And I was like, well, I'm not antsy. I'm like, I'm just looking for, a little bit of communication or a plan or something, And I'm like, oh man, like, why are bicycle mechanics such assholes? Or, any of my videos, and it's playing out with me, like, why can't I just get a straight answer? Can I actually trust that this is going to get done right? I don't think I can. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think about all the times that I've probably left my customers hanging because clear communication is actually quite difficult, especially today. People want to be called, texted, emailed. It's just hard to meet everyone's expectations all the time, and I just thought it was funny, and I'm like, okay, now I gotta put this video out that I've been thinking about, and so here I am. So what's funny is, I'm in this small town. We got like 6,500, maybe 7,000 people in this town. And we've got the Lake Mills Community Network on Facebook. And it's kind of like our version of Nextdoor, where people can go and basically crowdsource information. And so we get a lot of, hey, can you recommend a vet? And we have 2 vets in town, 2 big ones, I think. And you'll get about an equal number of people that are like, oh, these are the best vets. I take all my animals there and have forever. They're absolutely wonderful there. Both of them get rave reviews, and then somebody will be like, oh, I used to use so-and-so, but we had a problem, so I went to so-and-so, and it's so much better. You'll get that. And the same thing for car repair. It's hilarious. We have like 3 big ones. 2 of them, I think, are like 2nd or 3rd generation. And people will be like, hey, new to town, looking for a reliable, trustworthy mechanic at a reasonable price, looking for recommendations. And it's just flooded. Everybody answers, and and each shop in town gets about the same 4.5 stars, or whatever. You'd never be able to make a decision based on the feedback you get from the town. It's all the same. It's just like they're all good. Everybody's doing a pretty good job out there getting it right. I've seen a couple of, the people that don't really like my bike shop for whatever reason. They'll be like, hey, I already went to Gibbs, they won't do it. Where should I go? But, there's no bike shops around here. We have a few people that are like, hey, I don't take it to the major guys. I go to the little independent shops with my bike or with my cars, and they tend to be more reasonable and blah, blah, blah. If you have like a high mileage car, sometimes it makes more sense. So you get a few of those. And then of course you have the do-it-yourself guys that are like, I just do my own brakes at home. They always pipe in. And then you're always going to get the Karen who's like, this is my big opportunity to tell everybody how disappointed I was that I got ripped off and that blah, 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 this and that happened at this place one time years ago, and I'd never in a million years go back. And then that service provider has to answer with a reply that's like, I'm so sorry you had that experience with us. what can we do to make this right? If you give us a second chance to come in and talk about it, you know, and it's just like, it's this song and dance, and it's just ridiculous. All right, and I know this is something that everybody gets worked up about, because when I go back and look at my video performance, the bike fixing videos that do the best are the ones that have customer or is it worth it, or something about somebody spending money with me as a service provider and whether or not it's fair, right? Like, that's a thing. So people like to react to those Facebook posts for the same reason. Everybody wants to have their say and, you know, have their injustices heard and, you know, tried in the court of public opinion or something like that. But I'm telling you, trying your local service providers in a court of opinion, whether it be online or elsewhere, is not a solution to this problem. It's binding. And so what are the solutions? Well, for me, it's easy. Because I have data and a platform that shows that I can just make videos about it, and I know people will watch them because the videos where I do talk about this, and that's because I have proven to myself time and time again that YouTube rewards rage and controversy. You guys love rage and controversy. It sells. I mean, you just look at American politics and you know that that's what sells. Whew. That is good right there. I like that. That's what sells for me. Fluidity and function. I also, with this channel, get an interesting extra level of expertise because you guys tell me in the comments a lot of things that you'd never tell me to my face in the bike shop. Most people are really afraid of conflict or averse and will just like go away unhappy and then talk about it at the next dinner party instead of like having the difficult conversation with me that they had a bad experience of some sort. And that's a double-edged sword because a lot of times it's just not fair. You know, you guys are pretty anonymous out there and you can say whatever you want to make your own conclusions. And there's not much I can do because the more I try to explain myself, the worse it gets and so on and so forth. On the flip side, it gets me out of my bubble and I realize that there's a much bigger world to consider out there than the little one that I live in. So that's been kind of a nice insight into the consumer culture that we're in and what's expected from retailers. So yeah, the solution for me is easy. I can just make videos about it and make money off of the thing and you know, it is what it is, right? But for you, the solution's a little more difficult, I believe. I think it's really important that everyone understands, and this is on both sides, but especially on the consumer side, that in most cases, I mean, when you're talking about repair for your car, if you've got high mileage cars or whatever, and for your bikes, or whatever, I guess it works for anything, lawnmowers, that there's gonna be rideable and right. And the gap is pretty big there. And I see this in the comments where some people are like, I can't believe you would do a tune-up without replacing all the cables and housing. And it's like, well, the tune-up is more of a rideable situation in many cases. You know, we're not restoring the bike, we're just tuning it up. You know, we don't know if you're okay with clean lube and adjust, if that's your expectation. Oh man. So just understand that we don't know if you're a rideable or a right person. You know, with the Volvo, I wanted rideable, you know, like cheap tires, and let's just make the car go straight because it's a real high mileage car for a teenager. We don't really care. It's only going to be driven for another year before he goes to college. Let's just keep her on the road, you know, and they were giving us both options and it was very fair, right? It was fine. Also, I think that the economics of auto repair and bikes for sure has changed so much that the technology has surpassed what anybody with just a good mechanical sense can deal with. It takes a real technical expertise and it's really hard for smaller retailers to keep up with that innovation and to hire people at those wages that can be experts in it. So It really needs to be managed on the consumer end, that if you're buying a fancy product, understand that you're limited in service and you're going to have to pay for it if you want that to be good. So it kind of boils down to communication, right? Like if you're able to communicate to your service provider what you're actually looking for, rideable or right, that kind of gives them an idea. And they have to provide both options, because their whole goal is to make sure everybody's happy and still turn a profit. And they're not going to make that much money on a $180 alignment, where they make a lot more money if they can sell you parts and do the job right, and you won't come back to them. And that's a big part of it, is they don't want you to have to come back and have it be more expensive. Then like nobody's happy. Managing expectations and mitigating consequences and communication is really difficult. One way they get around that is most of the time mechanics aren't good communicators, so they have service writers up front that check things in, and they tend to be a lot friendlier, but they lack technical expertise, so they don't really know the answers to your questions right away, and then it's got to go back to the mechanics, and it takes a while. So communication's really difficult, so with the heightened innovation and technology involved, and finding answers is hard. It's hard to have the experts on the phones. Just makes everything hard. So it's like consumers have to understand that things have changed and it's not just straightforward anymore. Every issue is an issue. So managing your expectations, then again, saying, I'll leave a note letting them know you're antsy is not something that the person answering the phone should say. The economics has really changed. Why is it $120 for a bike tune-up now when it used to be, just like 15 years ago, it was $35? And it's for all of these reasons. So much of it is it's consumerism, straight up. It's just selling units. And that's where a lot of the profit is. And for guys like me, that's really tough because I don't do retail very well. It goes against my ethos. I want to repair stuff, and the money's not there, and the only way to do it is with high labor dollars. The liability insurance hasn't gotten any cheaper, that's for sure. We got to be able to keep up. Rent and liability insurance is all of it, because we know wages haven't really gone up, so labor costs haven't really gone up, but everything else has. It's just so unfair, everything is. The vet did send me back with one of those weird Elizabethan cones and some probiotics, and all the cone did is freak out the cats. They didn't know what to think and make that whole dynamic way worse. But the probiotics made it so his farts don't stink so much. So, that's going to make the decision to keep him a little bit easier. The DIY stepdad with the lift said, no problem, we'll just put some new control arms in there if we need them. They already put it in the lift and took a look at it, and they're like, it doesn't need control arms. So DIY is always a nice option if you've got it. And I really fully expect that bike to get boxed up and shipped today, or hopefully Friday, and then get that bike next week. That'll be a fun video for you guys to look forward to. But at the end of the day, I don't think any of you can trust your mechanic to do quality service at a reasonable price any more than we can trust you to understand that we're doing our very best to avoid a 1-star review and still turn a profit. That's really what it's all about these days. Everything's always being tried in the court of public opinion now, and it's really, really hard on retailers to get it right. Everybody wants to tell everybody how bad their experience was, and it's rare to say good things. So like a lot of you that are watching this channel, I am the kind of guy who likes to try to, do it myself and get by without going to the experts and just avoid that whole mess. Because a lot of times I just think I know better. In a couple of the cases, I think I actually have known better. Like the bike shop thing, it's like, man, I definitely am on the side where it's like, that could have been done a lot better. And if it was my employee or whatever, I would have handled it differently, or I'd have been like super straightforward, like, hey, this isn't gonna happen until after New Year's, but I'm more than willing to help you out. It's just ironic that it's, that I had that experience, that could like really piss a lot of people off, I think. And the other ones are just how it goes. And it's just my lack of understanding that's really causing the problem there. It's a matter of mutual trust and mutual respect all around. If you go into it thinking they're ripping you off, calling them a liar, whatever, chances are is you're setting yourself up for failure. I just don't believe that a lot of small business owners are incentivized enough to be selling people things they don't need, because everything's being tried in the court of public opinion and the dirty laundry will be aired. So there's all these stop gaps with service writers and so on getting in between you and the mechanic to avoid any kind of messiness from the mechanic telling you to go get, which is probably what I would do. I like having an employee in here to deal with my customers instead of me, because it's frustrating for me. And thank God I've got this channel to express it this way, kind of get ahead of the game. And I just hope that you guys all understand that we're good people doing our best. And yes, you should trust us. We do kind of know what we're doing, and no, we're not ripping you off for the most part. I'm sure it's happened, but I don't, at least, or I don't try to. Sometimes I make mistakes, but I'm not dishonest. Anyway, thanks again for tuning in. This is actually a really cool bike. I love this color. I think these kind of bright colored vintage bikes are on trend right now, or maybe it's probably was on trend and I'm just picking up on it because I'm an old guy. But this is a fun one. It is one of those Trek frames that I love so much. It's a size too small for me. We got the bike swap coming up in a couple weeks. That'll be fun. It'll be another fun bike swap video. Actually, there's a couple of them coming up I'm going to go to. And this is a bike swap bike. You know, I'm not going to sell it at my used bike store. Nobody's going to come in and buy this. I mean, maybe somebody would, but you know, a couple $100 maybe. I don't know. It's whatever. It works good. It's a fun old classic road bike. Thanks again for watching. If you made it to the end, that's just so gratifying for me. So thank you so much. Give it a like, subscribe if you haven't. Share this video with all of your favorite social media groups. If you got any bike forums that you're on, let them know about the Bike Farmer. That really helps a lot. If you've got a little extra money or think you got more than I do, share it with me. And you can do that by sending a super thanks, you know, 5, 10, 20 bucks. I usually use it to buy tacos, which I haven't done in a while. I should get myself some tacos. Yeah, you could join the channel right here on YouTube instead of going to Patreon and all that, become a monthly sustaining member. And that's a guaranteed income for me and really helps. If I can build that up, then I can depend on that and not have to beg for money as much for yourself. Don't forget to click that notification bell so you and your bikes can stay tuned.